Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course, and we are pleased to be joined by a very special guest, Garth Allan of Racing News Now. You've heard me talk about him a lot, but now here he is. Of course, you may see him cover the ARCA series. How's it going, Garth?
It's going fantastic, Casey. How are you?
I'm good, man. So yesterday you put out a video about the ARCA East series on how you want to give or take get rid of it if they're operating the way that they want to. Okay. So Ron Drager was on a press conference a few weeks ago to talk about the 1500th race. And he made some comments about, what the future of the East series is, the future of the West series is. He said the future of the East series is, 5 main ARCA races with 3 combo races, maybe to help the teams, maybe help ARCA East teams maybe not go to as many races, maybe just to save money and all that.
Yeah.
You did not think that, and some of the things that you said, and I know you've said things that, ARCA needs to do or how to fix things, not just in ARCA and NASCAR as well. But what was your take on where do you think the East series needs to go?
Well, so first off, you mentioned that I've said things like this in the past. So I've always seen my job as a reporter here as not to always just push propaganda and to just always be talking about everything is great and everything is perfect. My job is to tell the truth and to explain things and maybe give a different side and just show that not everything is always perfect. So on this press conference with ARCA President Ron Drager, he mentioned, as you said, that the future going forward would be 5 standalone races and 3 combo races for the ARCA Menard Series East. That was generally what they were looking at going forward for a schedule. I was fine with that for 1 year this year. I understood doing it this year because of COVID reasons and car counts and that sort of thing. I understood the need to maybe do that for a year before you get the series back on its feet and get it back going in the right direction. But then he said that this was what they were looking at doing permanently. And I disagree with that very much, because if you're only going to run 5 standalone races, that's essentially a 5-race season. Yes, you've got the other 3 combo races where you're getting points for that series, but that's only 5 races where the ARCA East series can really shine on its own, because it gets lost in the shuffle in a main ARCA race. You don't talk about the ARCA East race, especially when the championship for the ARCA East series is in the middle of a main ARCA race that's not the championship race for the ARCA Menard series. Nobody's going to be talking about that, because more than likely, Sammy Smith, Mason Diaz, those guys that are going to be running for the ARCA East championship are not going to be running for the win at Bristol, because they generally aren't going to be able to keep up with Ty Gibbs, Corey Heim, that sort of thing. That's usually what we see in these combo races. They'll usually run back half of the top 5, top 10, and they aren't usually a factor for the win, unless you're somebody like a Sam Mayer that's already proven his worth in the ARCA Menard series. So it really devalues the ARCA Menard Series East to be running a schedule like this. And it raises the question in my mind of, why does it even have to exist at this point? Essentially, you've got the series on life support at this point. And I said this in the video, you've got it on life support. So either pull the plug or give it the miracle drug to get it back to full health. You can't keep it on life support forever. Life support only does so much. And if you keep it on life support for too long, then you've only got a shell of a series that there's really no point in it existing.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. It's something, but that's not the only thing that you've said in the past about, the main ARCA series. And around this time last year, you said that maybe taking the Xfinity series and merging it with the ARCA series. You did say that. Why is that? And this doesn't go into the ARCA East series and all that. But these are things Yeah, I want to ask you about that because that's an interesting concept because in taking away one series and merging it into another series in your kind of proposal, and I'll put a link to the video on this on my Twitter page and we'll see what I'm talking about there. But how would that work? Kind of talk about that proposal and what you think that would help the ARCA series and how that would help it.
So specifically what I proposed wasn't necessarily a merger of Xfinity and ARCA. It was just more or less the whole NASCAR ladder system right now is kind of bloated and broken, and there's too much and not enough at the same time. There's too much to the ladder and not enough really happening with it. Essentially, at this point, I feel like the Xfinity series is unnecessary. And honestly, it would help the rest of the NASCAR ladder to just get rid of Xfinity. You could essentially what getting rid of Xfinity would do is it would bump Trucks and ARCA up a step on the ladder. So Trucks would go essentially where Xfinity is now, and ARCA would go essentially where Trucks are now. By getting rid of Xfinity, you open up all that purse money that's being used for Xfinity. You can infuse that money into Trucks and ARCA to help them bolster. When you've got more purse money flowing into those series, that allows more teams to say, hey, it might not be a bad idea to run that series now because there's more money there and it makes more sense financially for me to run a team in that series, because that's one of the biggest issues we've got, especially with ARCA right now. There's not enough money flowing around in that series. That's why you don't see a lot of big teams in that series. Essentially, you've got JGR and Venturini's an ARCA only team as it is. Outside of them, nobody wants to touch ARCA right now because there's not enough money flowing into the series to make it financially worthwhile. So you get rid of Xfinity, and that opens that up. Now, that also allows for more big teams on top of the financial aspect to move into ARCA as well, because then you have to restructure where all these teams sit in the ladder as well, because you've got all these Xfinity teams that would be left without a home. So some of them might go to Cup, some of them probably go to Trucks, but then you've got too many teams in Trucks. So they either stay in Trucks, they go down to ARCA, which ARCA now is where Trucks was on the ladder. So essentially, I know a lot of people aren't keen on the idea of getting rid of the Xfinity series when you first hear this, because you're like, oh, I love the Xfinity series. That's a great series. It's been around forever. And I get that. But nothing in this ladder stays the same forever. I mean, back in the day, we had the Goodies Dash series or the Darlington Dash series and all these other, the late model Sportsman series and all kinds of other things that have come and gone through the NASCAR ladder through the years. None of this has to stay the same forever. But I felt like keeping ARCA was more important than keeping Xfinity, because ARCA has so much more of a rich history and more of its own identity at this point than Xfinity does. Xfinity really doesn't have an identity at this point as it is. It's just kind of Cup Junior at this point. They run most of the same tracks, most of the same teams in the series. Honestly, we could do without Xfinity at this point, and it would just make the NASCAR ladder more healthy.
By the way, this is just an idea. This isn't actually happening. I just want to make that clear. But he says things that make
I say a lot of things.
Eyebrows. So I figured I have to ask that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I know. Let's get back to the ARCA stuff. I know that you've been covering, the main ARCA series along with ARCA East and ARCA West this year.
Mm-hmm.
We're witnessing something historic in the ARCA series. So, obviously everybody knows Ty Gibbs is a talent. And in the East series, Sammy Smith is equivalent to what Ty has been doing so far in the main ARCA series. I know that, everybody likes greatness. Everybody likes when people win all the time. But, there's those people that, we just haven't seen any really cars that are competitive enough to get to that point. And we've seen Corey Heim win on the super speedways and stuff, but lately it's just been the 18 has just been dominating in the series. And look at what Sammy Smith did last week. I mean, he qualified 6th and almost and then with like less than 100 laps to go, he basically goes and it doesn't lap the whole field, and almost laps the whole field, I should say. I mean, it's good to see. It's good to see Ty Gibbs doing what he's doing because he's a very talented driver, and I think he is going. He could. May break the modern ARCA record, which of course is set by 12 by Tim Steele in 1997. He can't break the ARCA Menard Series record for wins. That's 19. But what do you think about this season so far in East, West, and in the main ARCA series?
So there's been a lot of talk this season. I know you said that people like seeing people win a lot. I would disagree with that. Everything I've seen is people don't like seeing people win a lot. People don't like seeing Ty Gibbs win every single race, basically. Outside of Corey Heim winning Daytona and Talladega, Ty Gibbs has won every main ARCA race so far this year. And if he keeps on the path he's going, he's going to win most of the rest of them at this rate. So it's been an interesting season. I don't want to say it's been a bad season because that would imply that Ty winning all these races is bad for the series. And in a way it is, because most fans, I don't want to say most fans, but I feel like there's a lot of fans tuning out at this point because they feel like they know what's going to happen. Oh, well, Ty's going to win again. He's going to win by a lot. Or in the East Series, oh, Sammy Smith's going to win again. But Sammy Smith was an interesting case at Southern National. As you mentioned, he started 6th. And all throughout the day, practice, qualifying, first 130 laps even of the race, didn't really have winning speed. It was Mason Diaz. All of a sudden on the last pit stop, I don't know what they did to that car on the last pit stop. All of a sudden, not only did he go from being a clear second place car, he passes Mason Diaz, and in the final 70 laps all but Joey East, who finished in P2, and probably with another 20 to 30 laps, probably would have lapped Joey East too. So I don't know what they did on that last pit stop, but it obviously was a major help. This season as a whole has, all I can call it is interesting, because I don't want to say it's been good, but I don't want to say it's been bad either. Because Ty Gibbs, I think, is a once in a generation type of talent, especially with how he's been driving this year. Now, saying he's a once in a generation type of talent, I feel like we've got 2 of those right now with Sam Mayer in the same generation, which is going to be interesting. But I don't want to discredit Ty's season because it's been incredible. And I think he is going to break that modern era win record this season, and probably by a healthy number. But I don't know. It's just been an interesting season. That's about all I can say about it.
Yeah, I mean, it literally has, because, with Ty winning, whenever somebody wins a bunch of races, it for some reason, it just gets people angry because, and this is just coming from experience. If it's like people don't, people aren't gonna, watch. People are going to watch this like, oh, I want to win all the time. Because the thing is, winning all the time is good, which it is. And I don't want to discredit that. But for some people, it's like they want some different people winning all the time. It's like sometimes, that's what it is. I don't know. I just don't want to say anything, that's bad about this, because it's not. It's good. Because, what Ty Gibbs is doing right now is basically flat out dominating.
Oh yeah,
that just shows how much talent he actually has. I mean, he goes on and wins 2 Xfinity races, so,
and probably going to win more than that by the end of the year.
Pretty much, yeah. So going into the rest of the season, across all 3 series, kind of, looking at what we have, the 3 combo races for East, so we can kind of combine what ARCA and ARCA East are going to look like. The ARCA West side of things, though, that's where it's really going to get interesting.
In terms of what, car count?
not caught. Well, that's a whole nother issue for another day.
Yeah.
But just in terms of how the racing's going to go this season.
I think ARCA West is going to be pretty exciting, as it has been the last few years. ARCA West is just kind of its own little contained bubble of excitingness, and it's separate from the ARCA Menard series, but at the same time, it's within the ARCA Menard series, and I don't know, it just seems like almost every West race, get rid of Sonoma, because Sonoma, Chase Briscoe ran away with it.
Right.
But I mean, even if you take Chase Briscoe out of that race, that was an exciting race. So it seems like every time we end up in a West race, even if the car count is 8 cars, it ends up being an exciting race. And that's another thing I've had strong opinions about is car count too.
Yeah, let's get into that. Car count. I mean, the one thing is, and I will say this, ARCA is not hiding from this. Car count is an issue. But I think you need to it's not how many cars that are in the field. It's how many competitive cars you can have. I mean, we've seen ARCA West races with 9, 10 cars. They were pretty good races. But, it is an issue, that car count. And I know that ARCA is working very hard. Of course, if you have seen my interviews with Charlie, I know they are working at it. But this kind of goes back to some of the things that you've said in the past of maybe some of the suggestions that you had to improve the series. What do you think we need to do in terms of car count to, help improve that?
So, and yes, you make a great point, is I've been harping on that for forever now, is people keep talking about how bad the car count is at some of these races, how we'll have 12, 13, 14, 15 cars in a race, and talking about how it's going to be a bad race because we don't have hardly any cars in the race. And that's just not true, because as you said, West races specifically, we've had great races with 9, 10, 11 cars in the field, and they've been barn burners. They've been fantastic. Having a good race is not contingent on how many total cars are in the field. Would I like to see a full 40-car field every week? Yes, 100%. But that isn't the only determining factor in whether a race is good or not. Now, in terms of what they can do to get bigger car counts, I think there's 2 main things. And one of them is one thing that Ron Drager talked about in that press conference from the ARCA East thing. They are currently working on getting some old Gen 5 chassis to infuse into the series to help maybe some more independent teams come in. And at the end of the season, they're going to start working on Gen 6 chassis, infusing those into the series as well. That, I think, should help bolster the independent team numbers. I'm just worried that, yes, we may have more cars in the field, but it'll just be a 35-car version of the same things we're seeing now, with the 18 car just running away rather than a 15-car version. Does that really make the race better to have those extra 20 cars when they're not really adding anything to the race? Now, if the whole getting rid of Xfinity and reworking the ladder system were to come into play, I think that would help car count as well, because then you would have some restructuring and teams moving around, and inevitably, just because partially they'd be forced there'd be nowhere else to go, you'd have more teams go down into ARCA, and that would bolster the numbers. And honestly, you definitely would end up with a few good teams coming from that. I guarantee not every good team that was in Xfinity and trucks before Xfinity is gone would all end up in the truck series. That would just be too many good teams, and that wouldn't work. Some of them would be okay moving down to ARCA, and then that would help with the competitive car numbers as well.
Okay, I know that the series has been talking, with Ty winning. I know that you've said things, said that things about Corey Haim as well. And then you look at guys like Nick Sanchez and Thad Moffitt, who have impressed as well this season. And then you got guys like Greg Van Elst and Andy Jankowiak, some new faces to the series. Of course, GMS Racing has been in there. Brett Holmes Racing, we're going to see some of them. Young's Motorsports is in the series. We got a lot of drivers. It's been quite an interesting season. Who else has impressed you so far among some of the drivers that I just mentioned?
Greg Von Alst, Andy Jankowiak specifically have impressed me a lot. It seems like every time Greg Von Alst has shown up, he's had top 5 or at the very least top 10 speed, which some races top 10 speed doesn't mean a lot in an ARCA race right now, but top 5 speed definitely does, no matter what race it is. And he's had speed like that a lot of the time. Andy Jankowiak has been pretty fast, Daytona and Talladega at least. Was he at Charlotte too? And I don't think he was super fast in that race, but I mean, especially at the super speedway races, he's been pretty fast at them. Nick Sanchez continues to impress me. I think if Ty Gibbs were to have some mechanical issues or something by the end of the season, I think Nick Sanchez could sneak in for a win. I just don't see anybody sneaking in for a win unless Ty Gibbs has some sort of mechanical issues or something of the sort by the end of the season, getting caught up in a wreck or something like that. But even then, if Ty gets caught up in a wreck, then you've got Corey Heim that's kind of in this middle lane between Ty Gibbs and these other fast guys like Sanchez, Moffitt, and all of them. So if Ty Gibbs gets taken out, that kind of opens it up for Corey Heim. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. And Thad Moffitt as well has very much impressed me this season as well. It seems like every year he continues to get faster and faster. And unfortunately, it just seems like that whole team, they're still about a step behind that 18 car. And unfortunately, it's just, I don't know. They've got the speed. They're just not quite there to the 18 just yet.
Yeah. And I know that he has, I know he's not committed to run the full season yet. I know he's working on it. So we'll have to see if that team does run the full season. But I know we're coming up and we got some, you're going to be a busy guy the next few weeks, actually the rest of the ARCA season. Kind of talk about what you're going to be doing.
So for anybody that is fairly familiar with what I've done in the past, I will be at most of the ARCA races for the rest of the season from the track. So either Elko or Berlin will be my next race. I'm not 100% sure on Elko yet, but I will be at Berlin. And then essentially I'll be at every race after that for the rest of the season, outside of maybe Watkins Glen. That one I'm not 100% sure on yet, but I do a lot of coverage from the tracks, driver interviews, paint scheme previews have been pretty popular on Twitter lately, where I'll just take a picture of every car in the field, tweet it, and people seem to really like that. So we're going to keep continuing doing those. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, which we're almost to 900 now, YouTube will let us do mobile live streaming, which I've got so many ideas for different live things that we can do from the track. And a lot of them don't work as regular videos, which is why we haven't done them yet until we get the live capability. But there's going to be a lot of good things coming up and a lot of added coverage that I think people won't expect that we'll be doing from these races once we do hit that 1,000 marker.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. Interesting for sure, because here's the thing: you have some of the races where you're going to have multiple races, including I think one's going to be in July 31st, or Winchester and I think Colorado around the same day, and then the week of Michigan and Springfield, and I think there's an ARCA West race inserted between the two.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to do that?
I still haven't quite figured out the details on that yet. Obviously, I'm not going to be at the West races. I will be at Winchester on the 31st. I know that. I'm not 100% sure how the Colorado coverage will work that day as well, how we'll do the rewind show or any of that. But there will be coverage of both. And then in terms of that Michigan, Irwindale, Springfield weekend, I'm not sure I'm going to get a lot of sleep that weekend, but there definitely will be coverage of all of them. Won't be at Irwindale, but should be at Michigan, will be at Springfield, and coverage of all of it. So it's going to be a very tiring, especially couple of weeks, those specifically, but it's going to be fun. I love being at the track, and I love doing all this and giving everyone the coverage that I'm able to. So yeah, it's going to be tiring, but it's going to be fun at the same time.
Especially since things have started to opening up now around the country. So it's definitely, and now that now the garage areas are back open to media members, and I think it's also starting to open up for the public as well. So it's definitely good to see. So that, I think that does help with that. So look forward to seeing you at either Elko or Berlin coming up later on. But anyway, Garth, Allan, thank you so much for coming on. I know we talked about a lot today, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, Casey.